So good morning, brothers and sisters. Good morning. How wonderful it is to see you all here this morning. Let's just start off with a prayer, yeah? Maybe let's pray together. Maybe you'd like to take somebody's hand, somebody close to you, even reach across the aisles. So I was thinking of a theme for the prayer, and I was reading about the story of the feeding of the 5,000. Maybe you're familiar with that story. Jesus is surrounded by so many people, his disciples, and they're following him because they want to listen to him. They want to hear his word. They want to hear what he's got to say. And of course, he's teaching the disciples. He's teaching all the people as well. And time goes on and they get a bit hungry. Have you ever been to a long meeting and even though you're inspired, you're still hungry? Not just for the word, but physically hungry. So where did all this food came? Because after the teaching, after they'd all fed themselves, there was food left over. How is that possible? I prayed about this story and I meditated and I put myself in the position of each one of the people in that story. I put myself in Jesus' position and thinking, trying to get inside his heart and his mind in that story, thinking about how desperate he is to teach people, to help them understand why he's there and what the message he's trying to bring to people, hoping that they will increase their faith and hoping that they will increase their love for one another. And the disciples concerned because they're probably more hungry than anybody else, being relatively poor people, and concerned that they want something to eat, and so do all the people that have come. But how does it start? It starts with one child, a relatively insignificant person, somebody who would often be overlooked and ignored. And that child takes out his food and starts to share it with other people. And that's where the miracle happens, brothers and sisters. The miracle was that actually everybody had brought their lunch with them, but nobody wanted to be the first one to share in case they were the only ones who brought their food with them and there wasn't enough for them. So that act of the small child was just got everybody, moved everybody's heart to share everything they'd brought. And what they found was that they'd actually got everything in abundance. They had everything they needed and more. And they'd already got it within them. It was no miracle of making something out of nothing. The miracle was the change of people's hearts. So in our prayers this morning, let's think about and pray for those people, perhaps children, perhaps adults, those people who often get overlooked, those people who make small actions in the background, who sometimes don't get noticed, but actually they're the ones who start big things. They start miracles from happening. They start miracles happening that can change the hearts and the minds and the lives of the people. Let's pray for those kind of insignificant people and pray that their blessings, their openness of heart and openness of mind can release our own locked in and blocked and trapped hearts to be more giving and more caring and more generous in the things that we do every day. Let's offer our prayers in the name of our true parents, in our own names. Amen. Adieu. So, I just came back from Northern Ireland. Have anyone been to Ireland? Has anybody been Northern Ireland? Yes, or same, yeah? I had such a lovely time. I was meeting professional people. I work with people who work within the health service. But I found a kind of freedom, a kind of simple openness in the hearts of people, very different from London. They're the kind of people who will talk to you on the tube train. You know, those kind of annoying people when you're trying to just pretend not to be noticing what's going on and just looking at your phone. kind of people who will start a conversation very naturally. They'll say hello to you in the street. Can you imagine that? Imagine walking down the street in Chislehurst or Bromley and somebody says, "Hi, good morning." And you think, what? It's all a bit strange. It's a bit unnatural around with us southerners down here. Northern Ireland? No, it's a beautiful place. They say the same thing about northerners as well, don't they? Northerners come down to the south of England and start saying hello to people, and people are a bit shocked when that happens. So anyway, I thought it was such a nice time to be in that group of people whose hearts are so open, and despite all the difficulties of their history, they showed me a lot of love and a lot of care. It was a beautiful thing to experience. So in our congregation today, we've got quite a few important people from our current church history, from the past church history, people that have achieved great things and are still achieving great things now. So thank you, Matthew, for the introduction, for the service today. Our national leader, doing the humble job of a service leader, but doing it very well indeed. Thank you very much for all of that. And people who have had other responsibilities, so Mark Brown and Linda. Linda, thank you for the music, and Mark working with UPF currently, or I'm not sure if you're doing things currently, but sometimes, yes, certainly in the past with high-level responsibilities. And also David and Kyunja Hannah, part of this congregation, who also have very high-level responsibilities on a European level. And all of us actually have responsibilities if we wish to take them. Thank you for the music. It's a wonderful extra dimension from the singers and extra instrumentalists too. Thank you, David Silk, for your big guitar or big violin or small double bass. I'm not quite sure what it is. It's a unique instrument, yes, with a unique player. Thank you for the extra dimension there. And actually there's a lot of people here who are not in this room. There's the people looking after the children, looking after the music ministry, the children's ministry. The children, of course, are not here, but then there's the adults who are looking after those children and teaching them principal themes and biblical themes, and doing a good job downstairs, so thank you for them. And one more thanks. Look at these beautiful flowers. Aren't they gorgeous? So there's a lot of preparation goes into our Sunday service, even though there's not a huge crowd. There's a few empty chairs. Wouldn't it be nice if we filled these chairs with new people, with people who we don't know yet? Surely we should start inviting a few more people that don't know about this service. We should start maybe advertising it a little bit and telling people that it's here. Maybe make it a little more regular than it is. Currently you have one every week. Get back to that point and start bringing new people in. Our friends, our neighbours, people who live locally, and so that they can be inspired with the spirit of the times. There's so many exciting things going on. Did anybody watch the video of I don't know what the actual title of the event, the event that happened in New York on Monday? Peace Begins With Me, thank you, yes. Wasn't it an exciting event? It was quite different from anything we've seen before. The theme was different. And the theme was different because of so many wonderful Christian brothers and sisters who are taking part and actively involved in that event. It wasn't a Christian event, but it was Christians coming to our true parents and recognizing our true parents, and also significant Christian leaders testifying to true parents, to testifying to true mother, testifying to the teachings of our true parents, the divine principle, actually using that content in their sermons, in their congregations, passing those insights, the deep insights that we have in unification principle, which are supplementary of a higher dimension to those that have been received so far through current Christian teachings. So a lot of inspiring things happening all around the world. And there's more events happening as well. As you know, my son Oliver is in South Africa. It's been touch and go. It's a really difficult thing to get these events working he's too scared to tell me what's going on in case I tell him to give up, But his faith is strong, and he's, just needs a gentle reminder from his mother, whose faith is stronger than mine. God bless her. Just to keep going and to try and make things successful. So, thank you, Jim, for your song. Jim or James, how do we call you? So, a wonderful song. Did you remember the title and the theme of the song? God loves people more than anything. Yeah? So the title of my message today is called Days of All Things. Notice days in plural. It's a little bit different. So we're talking about all things again. All things and anything. So I've taken a story from the Bible, from the book of Mark. You may be familiar with this story. Yes, Mark is in a book. Did you write a book? So, the story is again very much about the disciples, just as in our prayer we were praying, thinking about the disciples and their role in how Jesus was delivering his message and teaching people. And we do notice quite often that the disciples disappoint Jesus. They always struggling to really understand what he's saying. And Jesus, in this story, Jesus is going to express his frustration with them. Jesus is a man of vision and a man of mission, with an incredible mission. He knows the heart of God in a deep, deep way, but they just don't get it. They're ordinary folk. Yeah? And I'm quite sure Jesus, Father has had exactly the same situation. So let's read the story and see what's going on in the background. And when he came to the disciples, he saw a great multitude around them, and the scribes disputing with them. Immediately, when they saw him, all the people were greatly amazed and running to him, greeting him, saying, and he asked the scribes, "What were you discussing with them?" He's interested to know what the content of the conversation is. And then one of the crowd answers, "Teacher, I brought you my son, who has a mute spirit. And wherever it seizes him, it throws him down. And he foams at the mouth and gnashes his teeth and becomes rigid. So I spoke to your disciples that they should cast it out, but they could not." And he answered them and said, "O faithless generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I bear with you? How long do I have to put up with your faithlessness? Bring him to me." So they brought him to him. And when he saw him, immediately the spirit convulsed him, and he fell on the ground and wallowed, foaming at the mouth. So he asked the boy's father, "How long has this been happening to him?" And the father said, "From childhood. And often he's thrown him both into the fire and into the water to destroy him. But if you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us." So Jesus said to him, "If you can believe, all things are possible to him who believes." Immediately the father of the child cried out and said with tears, "Lord, I believe." Excuse me. There's some water down here. "Lord, I believe." Do you believe? Yes, so Lord, I believe. Join me. Lord, I believe.
Lord, I believe.
Help my unbelief.
Help my unbelief.
We've all felt the same way, right? So when Jesus saw that the people came running together, he rebuked that unclean spirit, saying, "Deaf and dumb spirit, I command you, come out of him and enter him no more." Then the spirit cried out, convulsed him greatly, and came out of him, and he became as one dead, so that many said, "He's dead." But Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him up, and he arose. And when he'd come out of the house, and when he had come into the house, his disciples asked him privately, "Why could you cast him out and we could not? So why could we not cast it out?" And he said to them, "This kind can come out by nothing but prayer and fasting." So in other words, they're not praying enough, they're not fasting enough. Their mind is focused on other things. Good story, right? There's some wonderful stories in the Bible, really worth looking at. So Jesus has got a kind of interesting play of words here, where he's talking about where the man is asking for all things. So suggesting that anything is possible. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. God bless you. Cheers. Oh, there's one here already. I didn't notice. So thank you for whoever prepared. I didn't notice it was there. So I got the wrong page here. So, Jesus is playing on words here. The play of the words is on the idea between anything. The man is asking if you can do anything. But Jesus is saying all things are possible. So there's a different idea, different context here. Jesus often makes these plays of words. If you know some other famous quotes from the Bible. There's another story in Matthew 8. I don't have it on the screen, but Jesus saw a great multitude about him, and he gave a command to depart to the other side. So again, Jesus is with a large group of people. And a certain scribe came up to him and said, "Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go." And Jesus said to him, do you remember what it is? Jesus said, "Foxes have holes, and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head." So the scribe is saying he's going to follow him wherever he goes. But Jesus is saying he has nowhere to go. Questioning him, saying, "Will you follow me if I've got nowhere to go, if I'm going nowhere, if it looks like things are going wrong, things are going down, as eventually it did in many people's eyes as Jesus was led to the cross. It looked like everything was being lost. Are you still willing to follow me if it looks like everything is going down?" And then another disciple said to him, this is in the same in the next verse, "Lord, let me first go and bury my father." And Jesus said to him, another play of words, "Follow me and let the dead bury their own dead." You remember this verse as well, right? It's a very, very common verse. We use it to teach the distinction between physical death, the death of the physical body, the flesh, the death of the flesh, and the death of the spirit. So the physical death, of course, is something that happens to each one of us. There are many births on this planet as there are deaths on this planet. It's part of the natural process. But the spiritual death, that took place at the time of the fall, a long, long time ago, when Adam and Eve fell and Satan took over control of our spiritual lives, and basically we became kind of dead to God. A tragic thing. So this is his play on his words. And the interesting thing here is that He's discouraging the man who says, I can follow you anywhere, I want wherever you go. He's discouraging him. And yet the man who is already a disciple, who is wanting to go and bury his dead, and is kind of perhaps not as committed as he ought to be, Jesus encourages him and says, follow me, leave the dead to bury the dead. So he's got different messages for different kinds of people depending on their circumstances. So by asking for anything, Jesus is saying or implying that this man who's asking just for his son to be healed, that actually all things are possible, that he can have all things, he can have everything that he wants, that there's no limit to what he can receive, even for an ordinary person, even for a fallen person. In one of our study sessions in the home group, one of the first sessions was studying about the nature of God. And we discovered that when you find God, you discover a kind of limitless capacity, something that's very, very hard to put into words, that God exists in everything in the universe. And also, when there's a kind of encounter like this between two individuals, two people, there's a sort of negotiation goes on. In fact, in any kind of interaction between people, there's a kind of negotiation to see what kind of result is going to come from that conversation, or for that discussion about what the result ought to be or what people should do. When you're buying something, every time there's some kind of negotiation with an outcome. And it's a power struggle of some sort as to who's going to be the subject, who's going to be the object in every kind of interaction between people. So a baby crying, for example, a small, insignificant person, but if a baby cries, everybody responds. You can't help but respond to the sound of a baby crying. Politicians discussing Brexit, so many negotiations, so much power struggle going on, trying to work out whose opinion is going to be the one that takes over and is the one that gets adopted as policy and determines the direction that this country is going into. The request for volunteers. This is also a kind of a power struggle. Who can buy the milk this week? Who can put out the chairs? Who can do all these little insignificant jobs? But all of these little things together make such a difference to the Sunday service. So we have a wonderful Sunday service today because of the work and the effort of kind of small, insignificant acts from small, insignificant people, but collectively they're very important. So there's another dimension to this. So, another example I thought of. Teenage daughters. I have one. I love my daughter to bits. She's glaring at me now because she doesn't want me to embarrass her. Usually I embarrass my wife by using my wife as an example. This time my wife's off the hook, and I'm going to talk about my daughter. Teenage daughters make demands. They're testing the boundaries. There's a kind of power struggle going on as she grows up and becomes a young woman and becomes an adult. So she's going out in the evening maybe to visit some friends, and she's wearing some ridiculously, maybe for me ridiculously, a little bit too low or a little bit too high or a little bit too... You should have seen her on stage the other week. Did anybody go to see her when she was performing on stage? She looked fantastic. But it's not the kind of clothes on stage that you'd wear to a Sunday service, you know, it's a little bit different, it's a little bit more... She's looking fantastic today, don't you think? But there's that kind of struggle going on as she's finding what her boundaries are, you know, what she can get away with, what time to come home in the evening, you know, and when, if she's going out visiting friends. Actually, she's very good because she always phones me and lets me know what time she's coming home and where she is and who she's with. So give her a good round of applause for that. She's a good daughter. So are you embarrassed? No, okay. I should try harder next time. But again, it's these kind of interactions. They're struggles for power, struggles for finding your own position, your own place in the universe, and taking on your own role as a subject in society. So I was also thinking about Abraham and another leader, and the Israelites that he was leading. Try and get inside their minds as well. That journey from Egypt to Canaan, how long did it take? Can you remember? How many years in the desert? 40 years, right? It must have been a very, very long way to take 40 years. How far could you travel in 40 years on foot? Could you get around the globe in 40 years? Maybe more than once. So a friend of mine is a cyclist. He breaks world records of cycling around the world. He did it in just over 100 days. Not bad, huh? He's an athlete, not like me. But 40 years, how far could you travel on foot in 40 years? I haven't even thought about it. I haven't worked it out. But do you know how long it could have taken if they went direct? I understood 6 years. 21 days. Okay, well, 21 days. I've got the wrong notes here. Maybe got the wrong version of the Bible, I don't know. But the point is, it could have taken just a very, very, very short time. Can you imagine if you're Abraham trying to lead these people across a short journey and they're delaying you over and over and over again, keeping you from your blessing? You're trying to go into the land of Canaan to inherit what God has promised you, and yet these people are wanting to go back. Every time there's a little problem, every time there's a challenge, they want to go back to Egypt. And think about this too. The people 40 years into the journey, many of them wouldn't know what Egypt was. They would have heard stories about it, but they wouldn't have been people who were born in Egypt. They were people who were born during the journey in the desert. And no idea really what Egypt was all about. All they know is the desert. Can you see a parallel here? Yeah? And Abraham is trying to convince these people that there is a land of milk and honey. Moses, sorry, I'm getting mixed up. Thank you. How embarrassing. Sometimes sermons have to be written in the early hours of the morning, which means that you don't always get an awful lot of sleep. So, hence the errors. So anyway, I apologize for that. So Moses, God bless Moses. So frustrated, trying to convince these people about the land of milk and honey, but they don't have the same foundation of struggle and suffering that the Israelites had in Egypt. They don't know slavery, but some of them do. So they're kind of halfway being delivered out. They've been delivered out of slavery, but they're not yet in the land of milk and honey. They're not yet where they're intended to be. How difficult it is for those people to really understand where it is that they're going, and to have the faith in their leaders, the faith in thousands, teaching us who are in the desert, struggling to understand where he's trying to lead us. Where is he trying to lead us? A world of peace, nothing less. A world of peace Ever since Father took on that mission from Jesus as a small child, his mission was to bring about a world of peace. That was the idea, the concept that was in the forefront of his mind. Nothing less than that. Every activity, every program, every event, every interaction with anybody that he met, whether it be a small, insignificant child like me at the time, to world leaders, he was thinking, how can I bring about world peace? Moses' thought is exactly the same. How can I bring people into this promise that God has given to us? How can I realize the next stage in the providence that is bound to happen? And how can I do it quickly? How can I get these people to understand? These faithless people. So thanks to God and thanks to true parents. So whenever we face a challenge, usually it's because we need to change something. I need to change quite a few things. I'm not so good. But the things I need to change are the things that I like. The things that I love most are the things that I need to change the most. Things that I'm indulged with deeply. Things that have given me gratification and satisfaction and a deal of pleasure are things that I love, are the things that I need to change. Things that I need to give up. My lovely enemy. But I need power to do that. I can't do it on my own. And ever since the fall, it's my physical senses, my physical experiences that have caused me to be detached from God. I don't connect to God through my physical senses, through my physical experience. I've not seen God with my eyes, I've not smelt God, I've not touched God. But I connect to God through faith. Spirit to spirit, through the Word of God. So through faith in his Word, through understanding the Word and the concepts, it goes into my spirit, into my mind, and into my heart. And that's where I meet God. So since we found ourselves as human beings outside of the Garden of Eden, outside of that ideal, the kingdom of heaven, outside of the land of milk and honey, we've been dominated by physical things and dominated by our physical senses. And the enemy has used those things to destroy our lives. We judge one another very often based on physical possessions, on the things that we have or the things that we don't have, on the size or the quality of your car. You judge somebody's internal qualities by the size of his car, the quality of his clothes, which brand he's wearing, which job he does, whether he's got a job at all. The fashion trends that lead people sometimes down quite wrong physical avenues. This is how we judge people, whether they're wearing the right kind of clothes at this particular time. And those trends change from one moment to the next as we fall into one trick after another, as we're lied to over and over again. So we're disconnected with God. But the relationships that we do have with God are not material. They're not intellectual. They're not physical, but they're emotional. From the heart, from the gut, from your spirit and from your soul. So often we're challenged. We're in a position to be called upon, to be asked to do things, and yet we complain. We get tired and we want to be left alone, and we give up when we're asked to do more and more. But the things that we're asked to do are playing on our strengths, not on our weaknesses. When we're asked to commit more, we're being asked to display our strengths, the things that we're good at, the things that we can learn to develop even more. They're not our weaknesses. But these are the things, these strengths that God is using to help us to grow, even though we're not yet fully developed. So we're looking for change in the future. I'm looking for change in my future. We're all looking for change in the future. We're looking for something different. We're looking for development. We're looking for what potentially we can become. We're looking to fulfill those those promises, because it is in us already, and it is already in God, and God sees that potential in us. Other people don't. They judge us with their physical senses, with their physical eyes and other physical senses, and they see our current reality, but not our potential. The man of faith sees the potential and not the current reality. And that potential develops through faith. Faith in your true self, your original self, and also faith in God, and God's faith in you. You have the power to overcome every single challenge you will encounter, and every single challenge you have ever encountered in your life since you were a little child. But we need a quantity of faith. So God is outside of my physical senses, which means I can conceive of God and conceive the reality of God kind of in any way that I choose, because it's not a physical limitation. My mind is limitless. My conception of God is something that I can decide. The quality of faith and the quantity of faith that I have is something that I can decide. My faith is the thing that opens doors for me. It opens doors to my future possibility, my future potentiality. My faith is not your faith. My faith is different from your faith. Your faith is unique. My faith is unique. It doesn't come through my physical senses, but faith comes to me through revelation, through perceiving the word, through prayer, through standing in front of you speaking today. It's revealed to me. Faith is something that is revealed, not something that is given as an object. And that experience with God, in spite of being incomplete, is still coming to me through revelation. What we discovered in the home group was that even though we are fallen, even though we are kind of outside of God's dominion, outside of the realm of the kingdom of heaven, God still embraces that, has embraced everything, and has taken responsibility for the fall because of the love of a parent. Even though we are in a world of sin, dominated so often by wrong thinking and wrong ways of being, and we're outside of God's dominion, we're separated from God. But still God is able to embrace and include everything and to take responsibility for the fall. So the best is yet to come. That word yet, Jim, is a very powerful word, because it takes us beyond our current reality into future possibility and our future potential. So I've not got a very big house yet. My car is not as good as I would like it to be yet. I don't have the job that I want yet. I'm not married yet. I am. I'm just thinking for you. I don't have all the skills that I need to do this mission yet. I don't have the knowledge that I need to take on this role yet. I don't have the experience to do what I'm being asked to do, to stand up in front of you and preach to you yet. All the things that we're asked to do are our future potentiality and future possibilities. It opens up the potential, all the potential. So chief priests, scribes, elders and thieves with Jesus mocked him on the cross, tried to tempt him to deny his potential and say, get down off the cross, you can save yourself. Those thieves, those liars, will try to steal your potential, try to take away what is already in you and yours, and try to stop you from changing and to stop you from growing. There are two powers working in you, powers for good and powers for evil. They are negotiating for power over you. But because you have met God, you know yourself as a limitless human being. You know yourself as a child of God. But still that struggle remains. Remember what Paul said in Romans 7:21. I find then a law that evil is present with me, the one who wills to do good. For I delight in the law of God according to the inward man, but I see another law in my members, warring against the law of my mind and bringing me into captivity to the law of sin which is in my members. Oh, wretched man that I am. Have you ever felt that way? Oh, wretched man that I am. Who will deliver me from this body of death? I thank God through Jesus Christ our Lord, was Paul's prayer. But despite those counter forces that are working against us, we are here. You are here today. So you must have made some victories in your life. You're not destroyed by those evil forces yet. But whether that is fulfilled or not is our choice. If we hang on to faith and keep on pushing for our potential, pushing for our possibilities by faith in God. So Satan has been trying to kill you since you were a child. I remember experiences in my life where I've been close to death. It might have been an accident. It might have been, in your experience, some kind of abuse in your life where the evil forces tried to destroy your spirit. Abuse, accidents, injury. But we are here to be nothing less than the true children of God. This is God's promise, to comfort the parent's heart. And true parents who bring God's love and salvation to the world, this is what we are to become. We are to become true parents ourselves, bringing God's love and salvation to the world. We are to be messiahs who bring healing to people and to defeat satanic forces. That is our potential. That is our role as children of God. So there's enough power in this community to change the world and to turn it upside down. We just have to think it with each other, believe what God has given us, and move with the Spirit and the thoughts of God. So God is Logos, and his thoughts, God has thoughts. God is thought. God is love. God is spiritual things, not physical things. And so, if we can think it, God can bring it to pass. God can make it happen. As long as we don't limit God, because we are the ones who create those limits on God. God's promise to bring about for us what he intended in the beginning is what it is that we are to accomplish. That promise has been there right from the very beginning. You were in God's mind from the beginning. Now, how does that work? God is eternal. God is limitless. True? He's eternal and he's limitless. So when did God start? That's another question we asked in the home group. So if you go back and back and back in time from now, we should be able to get back to the beginning, and even the beginning of God. Can we? We can't. We cannot. So we need to think about our concept of eternity here. So God exists in the now, but is timeless, which is why God could conceive of you even before now, even before the beginning. You have always been in God's mind, always been in God's heart. God said, I am that I am, when in the Old Testament they asked, who is God? God is eternal, God is omniscient, he has all knowledge. There is no time when God did not know you. You have always existed in God, and you have always been in his mind. He has always existed, and so have you. In perfection, in the kingdom of heaven. That's where you've existed. And that's why the devil can't destroy you. Because he operates in the physical, with your physical senses and your physical mind and your physical body. But we operate in the area of faith, in the area of spirit with God. So Jesus is showing us in the Bible how power exists in these interpersonal relationships. The man in the story is being tested. He has hope, he has vision, but a vision for healing for his son. He has expectation about what the outcome is going to be for his son. He has hope for healing for his son. He has hope for his son, who's been mocked relentlessly by Satan ever since that child was born. Remember, it said, when did this start? And the man said it started since the man was a child. So his vision is not for himself. He has a passion, a love, a prayer for his son. So how many of us are here because somebody prayed for us? I have no idea how much my spiritual mother, the person who introduced me to this movement, prayed for me, fasted for me so that I could be here. And our witnessing experience is actually, that's what it takes to bring people to us. It's not so much what we say or what we do, it's the internal, the prayer and the fasting and that internal effort that causes the Spirit of God to change the hearts and minds of people. Belief, faith, and prayer more than anything. But the disciples couldn't heal the boy. They were the ones who were supposedly closest to Jesus at the time. "O faithless generation," Jesus says, "how long shall I be with you? How long shall I bear with you? I need someone who knows how to pray with faith, someone who believes what God can do." But then we have the liar and the thief checking us, laughing at us in the way that he laughed at that man. As soon as we share our vision and our dreams with other people, somebody tries to knock us down. Someone tries to get us to throw away our potentiality, our possibilities, to throw away the things that God has already promised us and given us. But we have power through faith to realize that potential. So Jesus is asking us to get over our limited, realistic way of thinking, compromised by the anything will do kind of thinking, and that anything will do concept of myself, which limits myself and my relationship with God, and to connect with the God of all things. The concept of God and relationship with God that exists with all things. So we limit our expectations because of what we think we deserve, because we think we're not good enough, and so we accept anything. We don't focus on our true selves or what we expect we should become. We don't focus on the love or the blessings of our parent that the parent, heavenly parent, wants to lavish on his children. Through Jesus, God is asking us not to reduce him to an anything kind of God, but an all things kind of God, a limitless kind of God. And remember Father's focus at the beginning of his ministry. He accepted his mission, and that was to establish peace on earth, not just to build a church or a small congregation, not to be where we are now, but looking at the potential of where we should be, where we can be, receiving all things. So Heavenly Parent, so that he could feel God's heart, and that love for Heavenly Parent allowed him to ask for what most people thought and think is impossible. Most people don't believe the world can be restored to the kingdom of heaven, that original ideal. Our role is to believe it, to have faith in it, and to pass that belief and faith on to other people. And because of that passion for God, because he knows God's heart, is why he could endure and persevere through so many difficulties throughout his life, so many attempts on his life. So often trying to reach and to connect to people who were faithless, who didn't understand him, and yet hoping one day people will catch his heart and his message. So who is God? So many things. I've got a long list of things here. I don't think I'll bore you with it because we know the power of God. The King of the Jews, the King of Israel, the King of righteousness, the King of the ages, the King of heaven, the King of glory, the King of kings and the Lord of lords. God is always there for each one of us, no matter how insignificant we might feel. Let us pray together. Our loving Heavenly Parent, generation after generation after generation, you've been calling out to us. There have been times in humankind's history when we've been in very dangerous places in the desert, very difficult places in the desert, where we felt there was no hope, no future. Mankind was suffering so much, not seeing any hope for the future. And yet you'd bring someone to us to remind us of our potential, of our possibility, that there are things that we need to do to change. And through faith, through connecting to our inner life and deepening our inner life, through receiving and understanding the messages from those prophets and those saints and the Messiah, that we could change those things and improve our circumstances. And so we see, generation after generation, times when our spiritual development has improved because of the way in which you've nurtured us and educated us from being very separated from you to growing through adopted children and eventually to become your true sons and daughters. Heavenly Parent, we want to cling on to that possibility, to catch Father's vision from the very beginning of his mission, to know that peace on earth will be established and peace starts with me. That each one of us has that potential within each one of us, that we can achieve, each one of us, what it is that you're asking us to do eventually in our lives. We just have to stop limiting you. We just have to stop compartmentalizing you and recognize your power, the power of the principle, the power of spirit, and to have faith that all things are possible. We just have to ask for it, believe it, and let it happen. Heavenly Parent, hear our prayers. Amen and adieu.